Hey guys, Shy Got Picks here. Hope everyone's doing well, having a great week. We're here to be breaking down Dana White Contender Series Week 5. We're going to be giving a full breakdown analysis on each fight on the card. Make sure to catch my YouTube shorts if you want my best bets for each fight. Subscribe so you don't miss out on those. Other than that, let's get right into it. For the first fight on the card, we got Karine Laframbosi versus Nicole Cagliari. Laframbosi comes into this fight 8-4, 4-1 in her last 5 fights. She's 35 years old, 5'5", 64-inch reach. Meanwhile, Cagliari is 7-2, 4-1 in her last 5 fights. 27 years old, 5'3", 62-inch reach. So Laframbosi does have a 2-inch reach advantage. This is a classic grappler versus striker fight here. Laframbosi is a BJJ specialist, though she tends to focus on submissions over positions. This often leaves her on her back. Her takedowns are explosive, but her wrestling is predictable, and she doesn't chain wrestle really all that well. Laframbosi's striking is very poor, with low volume, predictable shots, and no head movement whatsoever. She's 35 years old and hasn't fought in 2.5 years, and previously pulled from Dana White Contender Series due to her pregnancy, which is raising a lot of concerns here. Cagliari is more of a mystery, as there's really not that much footage on her recent fights. Though she's coming from a kickboxing background, Cagliari's striking is technically better than Laframbosi's, though she's also hittable and doesn't move her head at all really that well either. On the ground, Cagliari's grappling has looked bad. She was dominated by Kay Hansen in her last known fight. If Laframbosi can get this fight to the ground, I expect her to find a submission. Laframbosi has made mistakes in the past, getting out-grappled despite being a BJJ world champion. If the fight stays standing, Cagliari should be able to find a knockout here. Laframbosi's striking is extremely weak. I'm leaning towards Cagliari here to get a knockout. It's really tough to go with somebody that's 35 years old facing a 27-year-old, especially when they're pick-em-ons, especially when the fights start on the feet, and you know, Laframbosi really doesn't have it when it comes to standing on the feet. So ultimately, give me Cagliari here. I think she could knock her out. I very, very much wouldn't be surprised if they go to the decision here. So, I mean, now that I think about it, give me Cagliari by decision. Up next on the card, we got Otar Tanzalov versus Josias Musasa. Tanzalov comes to this 9-0, 26 years old, 5'11". Musasa comes to this 7-0, 25 years old, 5'8", with a 70-inch reach. I love the matchmaking here. Both fighters are flawed but extremely entertaining strikers. On paper, this looks like an extremely easy win for Tanzalov, but Musasa could, I think he can cause a lot of problems here. Tanzalov has one of the most insane highlight reels, but his last 2 fights have been very underwhelming, let's just say. In both fights, he started strong but gassed out quickly under pressure. Tanzalov's cardio is very strange. He tires visibly after a few minutes, but doesn't completely gas out. His striking is dynamic but fun to watch with his fast hands and explosive kicks. However, he struggles when opponents close the distance. Musasa, on the other hand, is all about athleticism and power. He's not very technical but marches forward throwing bombs. Musasa is wild, loads up on every shot, and is extremely hittable. While Musasa's technique isn't great, he's a freak athlete with knockout power. Tanzalov should be able to pick Musasa apart at range, especially with his craftiness and speed. If Musasa keeps coming forward, we've seen Tanzalov doesn't handle pressure well and can fade quickly. Musasa's style requires a lot of energy, but in the one fight I've seen go almost 10 minutes, he's looked fine. Tanzalov can wrestle if needed, though Musasa's athleticism might help him fend off those takedowns. If Tanzalov doesn't finish Musasa early, things can get extremely interesting here. I'm leaning towards Tanzalov winning by an early TKO, but ultimately, I got Tanzalov by decision. Up next on the card, we got Yusri Belgari versus Taiga Iwasaki. Belgari comes to the 7-3, 4-1 on his last 5 fights. 32 years old, 6'5", 79-inch reach. Meanwhile, Iwasaki's 9-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. 27 years old, 6-1, and we don't know his reach. Iwasaki is not a bad replacement at all, considering the circumstances here. He's a karate striker, and while his record looks poor on paper, he actually looks decent in his fights. Iwasaki's striking is solid, though not on Belgari's level here. He relies heavily on kicks and has fast hands, but only throws in close range. Despite Iwasaki's strengths, Bulgari's clearly the superior striker here. I'm still not 100% sold on Bulgari as an MMA fighter, but his kickboxing skills have translated well to the sport. Bulgari's performance against Tulio last year wasn't great, though he had Lyme disease at the time. That fight exposed some holes in Bulgari's game, especially in struggles with pressure and ground control. Bulgari's recent performances have been impressive, but those fights didn't test him in the same way. He put on a striking clinic against Sami, but never went in for the kill, and Sami didn't pressure him much. Neither of those issues should come up in this fight, but something to watch for if Bulgari makes it to the UFC. Iwasaki has shot 4 takedowns in past fights, but Bulgari's takedown defense is very solid. I don't see that being an issue. On the feet, it should be all Bulgari. He's a huge middleweight who knows how to use his weapons well. His knees, elbows, and long range strikes make him hard to deal with, especially when he isn't being pressured. Iwasaki's point karate style plays into Bulgari's strengths. I see Bulgari winning this comfortably. Up next on the card, we got Cody Steele versus Kwamel Otoni. Cody Steele comes into this 6-0, 29 years old, 5'9". Otoni comes into this 12-3, 5-0 in his last 5 fights. He's 31 years old, 6'0", so he is 3 inches taller. I'm usually skeptical of Fury FC prospects, but I think Steele is pretty good. His potential is high, though he's very much an unfinished product at this stage. Steele is impressively well-rounded, especially considering he started as a BJJ guy and has only been training MMA for 3 years. There are areas where Steele still needs to improve. Steele is an experienced black belt and an amazing grappler, but his grappling isn't as dominant as I expected. He doesn't look like one of those grapplers who can take you down and end the fight immediately. Steele isn't a huge submission threat. He typically uses his BJJ to improve position rather than finish with subs. His control on the ground isn't overwhelming, and his opponents often manage to get back on their feet. In several of his fights, Steele's opponents have taken him down, which raises some concerns. Steele's next opponent, Otoni, has terrible grappling, so Steele should have an easier time here. I'm still unsure how effective Steele will be taking Otoni down and holding him there. Otoni's takedown defense is questionable, but he's been out of the cage for 2 years and recently earned his black belt, so improvements are possible. What impresses me the most about Steele is his striking. For somebody who's only trained striking for 3 years, he's got solid kicks, decent boxing, head movement, and devastating power. Steele's striking has room to improve. He's put out several opponents with one big shot after setting up some feints. Steele's striking defense can be a little predictable, and he leaves his chin exposed at times. Otoni is the best striker Steele has faced so far, though Otoni isn't very powerful, more of a volume striker. Otoni has quick hands and flashy kicks, but he's extremely hittable, especially going down to 155 for the first time. Steele will likely find Otoni's chin and put him out despite Steele's flaws. While I don't rule out an upset, mainly because Steele is still developing, I still think that Steele will get a knockout here. Give me Steele round 2 knockout. Up next on the card, we got the feature fight of Navajo Sterling versus Philip Latu. Sterling comes to this fight 4-0, 26 years old, 6'4", 82.7-inch reach. Latu is 6-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. 33 years old, 6'3", 79-inch reach. So a 3.7-inch reach disadvantage. This is a banger matchup between two kickboxers going at it. Sterling was initially booked to fight that week after, but his opponent pulled out, so he's getting this fight. Latu is a tougher challenge than Kevin Christian, but it's still a very winnable fight for Sterling. Latu is a solid kickboxer himself. He doesn't do anything flashy, but he's very technical and has great KO power. When Latu connects cleanly, he often puts people's lights out completely. Latu can be hittable though. He moves well for a former heavyweight and has solid footwork. However, Latu doesn't handle pressure well. Sterling is more likely to sit back and work his own game rather than apply heavy pressure. There isn't much footage on Sterling, but from what's available, he looks very talented. Sterling trains at CKB, coming from a kickboxing background. He has won several King in the Ring tournaments. He's a physical specimen, standing at 6'4", with an 83-inch reach, though he hasn't fought top-tier competition yet. Despite his inexperience, Sterling has looked great against low-level opponents. He showed sharp striking and comfort in the cage. While he's still very much inexperienced in MMA, I think the CKB program has him ready for the UFC. In this kickboxer versus kickboxer matchup where Latu won't shoot for takedowns, I favor Sterling to win here. Give me Sterling by round 2 knockout. There you have it. I'm predicting clean finishes across the board, whether it's crushing knockouts or some slick submissions. None of these matches are going to be going the distance, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, or if you think we're going to be in for any surprises. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe for more breakdowns, and stay tuned for all Fight Night action here. Other than that, thanks for watching. Stay up.